Mr. Jones had his weekly prayer. Once a week, Mr. Jones would raise his hands to the heavens and pray, "Dear God, why have you not helped me win the lottery?" Every week. He would complain to the Lord and say, "I'm a good man, I go to church, I give generously, I help my neighbor. Can't you please do this one thing and help me win the lottery just one time?" After a couple of months of this weekly prayer, Mr. Jones goes out to raise his hands, and the clouds part, and a clear, deep voice says, "Give me a break, buy a ticket." There's something of that in this text. How many of us bought a ticket and have held that one ticket every week thinking that's the winning ticket, even though it expired? Somewhere in our life we stop learning, stop growing, stop being open to new things happening. Whether it was the day we got baptized or confirmed, or we graduated from some school and we decided, now I know everything I need to know. When what we actually do is limit everything that's going to happen to us. Jesus goes home in this text. There's two contrasting stories in this 13 verses. The disciples are one, Jesus is the other. Jesus goes home, and poor Jesus, I just can't, I feel for him. He's going home. How more exciting should it be? And how devastating to have the experience that he has. You know, there's some people that read this text, and they read those questions, who is this guy? And they'll read them as if the people, the crowd asking them, really want to know. But maybe a better way to read it is that the questions are being asked because they're really just putting Jesus in his place. This is sort of that backward kind of compliment, because it ends with, "Oh yeah, that's the carpenter's son. We know this kid." And instead of seeing Jesus for who he is, they're seeing the 12-year-old boy that they helped raise, who maybe wasn't always perfect, who maybe in Sunday school needed some correcting. And instead of realizing this is the boy become a man who's brought a new thing in their midst, they've limited their experience of Jesus with their criticism, their rejection. And to me, the most painful part of those first verses are not only how the crowd reacted, but where it says that Jesus was limited. Jesus could do no big deed of power. When I think about God in my life, God in your life, limited is probably one of the last words I think of. You read about what Jesus is doing before this text, and after this text we hear these great deeds, feeding of the thousands, last week, raising the little girl from the dead. Seems to have no problem doing that stuff. A woman reaches out of the crowd, just touches his cloak, she's healed. That's how I think about God. God who created all this stuff without my permission or participation. Why would God need me? Why is it that when God goes home, God's limited? What happened? Contrast with the disciples who don't go home. They go away. They go on a journey, 2 by 2, denied all the comforts of home. Jesus goes home where you think there would be all the comforts of community, celebrating his return. The disciples are going out and they're not even allowed to take a second shirt without a change of clothing. And they come back with all kinds of great stories. They've been casting out demons and healing people, and people have been turning to the Lord. What an amazing trip they've had, contrasted with Jesus. Reverend Robinson was asked to preach at an old historic congregation in his tradition. A church that had been known for fine preachers and very vibrant ministry, but he knew they had gone through a decline. So when he got there early, one of the church leaders offered him a tour of their very expansive facility. And while they were on the tour, the elderly church leader said, about 10 years ago we thought we were going to close the doors. There were only about 50 of us in the room at the time. He goes, but now things have really changed. There's about 500 of us here on a Sunday morning. Our ministries have really grown. It's been amazing in the last 10 years. Robinson wanted to know what had happened. And the elderly leader said, well, we may give some credit to the new preacher, but really what happened, we started studying the Bible and we recalled the 7 greatest words that summarize the entire gospel message. Well, Robinson wanted to know if this was just another gimmick, or did they actually have something? So he asked. And the elderly church leader said, what we discovered, or what we remembered, was that the Bible teaches us, I am God and you are not. We forgot that. Robinson remembers this encounter because for him it was the experience of being in a church that had had great success. And through decline have been humbled, and in their humility had rediscovered their relationship with Jesus and have become open to Jesus doing a new thing in their midst. Sometimes coming to church is not about expecting new things. Sometimes we come to church expecting exactly the same thing. We don't always say it that way, but we see church as such a place of security and stability that if something changes inside a church, it makes us uncomfortable. But in the big picture, what it does is it limits us from Jesus doing a new thing in the midst of our community and in the midst of our lives. I'm going to my high school reunion this week. That's why I won't be here next week. You're going to be blessed to hear Tom Schofield. Tom was a Timothy of our church. He was a member in the pews, doing ministry, working a full-time job in a steel mill when God called him into ministry. And he left his steel mill job, went to seminary, was ordained, and is retired at the beginning of this calendar. So Tom's going to come back and fill the pulpit, and you'll be blessed by his message, just like he was blessed by this place when he was here more often. So I'm going back to my high school reunion, which could be a couple of things, right? One thing could be that I go back and we tell war stories. And I try and recover my youth. It's very tempting. You know, I see a few more gray hairs these days, so if I could go back and feel like I'm 17 all over again, hopefully not make some of the mistakes I made at 17, but, you know, have a good time like I was 17, that would be amazing. But I know those stories. I know those old war stories, and I bore my son with those all the time. What if instead I went back to this reunion and listen for what new things have happened in my friends' lives? You know, where has God been at work in their life? Through their children, for some of them grandchildren? I don't know what they did, but... What if I went with the anticipation and the openness to hear a new thing that's happened with my classmates? Learn some new stories. Maybe a new joke or two. Coming to church is like going to that reunion. If I come and I sit in the corner and tell the old stories with a couple old guys, which I feel like one of those, what is my Sunday morning like? There's a time and a place to remember those old stories. There's a time and a place for those stories. But if I come to church anticipating a new thing, meeting new people, hearing what new has happened in my friends' lives, seeing the God sightings that we talk about at Vacation Bible School, we start naming those things and looking for those things. At the end of the section about Jesus in this passage, the most disappointing thing for Jesus was to discover the amount of unbelief in his hometown, or the lack of faith, or the lack of openness to his ministry. They were closed. They didn't expect a new thing. They were still seeing the little boy that they had taught in Sunday school. They weren't seeing the opportunity for something amazing to happen in their life, and so only a few people were healed, and Jesus was disappointed. But at the end of the disciples section, and I love the way the story is told, it ends on such a note. This whole story, like Jesus' ministry, is an opportunity to make a choice. That choice can be seen as daunting, challenging, prophetic, judging us for our past, condemning us for wherever we've sort of walled off God from our life. It could be seen that way, but the story's not told that way. The story is told like the gospel message, with the happy opportunity that exists for all of us. Those disciples coming back with their stories. A people healed, demons cast out, those that came to relationship with Jesus Christ. It's not about having to give up about as much as being open for something new. It's amazing. I'm going to miss you next week. Maybe I'll come back with a new joke. If nothing else, I'll be able to see you again. Amen.